Hey everyone, how's it going? This is Azren, the language nerd here, owner of the Calgary Language Nerds, and welcome to today's podcast episode and, of course, YouTube video. Today, I'd like to talk about something that I've never talked about before, and it's something that has helped me, two strategies that have helped me to push past the intermediate plateau and get into the advanced levels of different languages. These are things that I've done, and I didn't consciously realize that I do them until literally today. So the first strategy is something that is called, I'm going to read it here, I took a note, Content and Language Integrated Learning, CLIL. That's the acronym for it. So CLIL, Content and Language Integrated Learning. What is that? Well, essentially what it means is you learn a subject in the target language with the goal of learning more about the target language and the subject that you're learning. So it sounds kind of complicated, but it really isn't. I'll explain how that's worked for me. For French and Spanish, I did a language and literature degree at the University of Calgary. When I was at the University of Calgary doing this language and literature degree, roughly speaking, the first 2 years of the program is entirely language focused. You learn grammar, you learn vocabulary, you do speaking practice on reading and writing, very typical language, foreign language classes. However, once you hit your third year and your fourth year, things change and the focus switches to literature. And what you do in the classes is you learn literature in French or in Spanish. So you read books, poems, essays, things of that nature in French and Spanish. And so the instructors, the professors, what they do is they teach you literature through French and Spanish, understanding that you are a language learner. So when you analyze, for example, an essay, you'll analyze the historical context, you analyze the cultural context, you analyze the themes and the symbolism, but you also analyze maybe some new words that you didn't know, maybe some vocabulary points or grammar structures or whatever else. The language elements also get addressed while you're doing the literary analysis. And so the primary focus of my classes were in my third and fourth years of my French and Spanish degree were literature. And that was the primary focus, but you learn the language by studying literature. And that was a really important piece of how I moved from the intermediate, let's call it upper intermediate. That's probably the level I had by the time I was in my third, fourth year, but moving from that upper intermediate level to the advanced levels. To a degree, that's what happened in Gujarati as well, except that I'm not at exactly the advanced levels yet in Gujarati. I don't have a C2 level or a near native level quite yet. But in a sense, this is also what happened with Gujarati. Because when I was taking Gujarati lessons in India with my private instructor, what ended up happening is we would have debates, and we were trying to essentially understand each other's upbringings and each other's points of view on the world. It's a very philosophical kind of class because we viewed things so differently. So the class was almost like a philosophy class in a sense, unintentionally, and we would discuss philosophy, basically our personal philosophies and beliefs in Gujarati. And it was by doing so that my Gujarati was improving. The teacher wasn't teaching me something that helped me go from one level to the next. It was that we were learning about a subject in the target language. And the result of learning about that subject was that my fluency and proficiency in the language improved. Now, another type of language learning method or strategy that has also come into play and helped me reach the advanced levels of a language as opposed to being stuck at an intermediate level is, I wrote it down here, it's TBLT, task-based language teaching. So what does this mean? It's pretty straightforward what this means. It means that you are using the target language to complete a specific task. So you might, for example, have to give a presentation about a specific topic. So in order to do that presentation, complete that task, you're going to have to research, you'll have to write a script, you'll have to get the script edited, you'll have to do a dry run of the presentation, you'll have to give the presentation. Then maybe you'll get questions as a Q&A after the presentation, after the Q&A, you might go home and think, man, some people used words in the Q&A I didn't realize. You look up those words. So by going through that entire process, almost like the preparation of the task, doing the task, and then after the task, the reflection of the task, in a sense, by going through that task-based language teaching, when you're doing that, it creates this deep connection to whatever the task was. So I can give you lots of examples of this. This also happened for my French, Spanish, Mandarin, French, Spanish, Gujarati, and now for Mandarin, to be honest. So for Mandarin, for instance, I was in Taipei, and I would give these presentations about life in Canada as a volunteer in schools. I would go to kids' classes, teenagers and kids' classes, and I would give these presentations in Mandarin about life in Canada, my life in Canada. And then the class would ask me a bunch of questions. So I would have to prepare for the presentations. I'd have to then give the presentation. I'd have to then answer questions. And then I have to reflect upon everything at the end to go, whoa, that didn't go right. Why didn't that go right? That guy asked me a question. I didn't understand that one word. What did that mean? Let me look it up. And that was incredibly helpful for me to improve upon my level. Same thing in my French and Spanish program. You know, when we'd have to do essays, that's a form of task-based language learning, language teaching, I would think, because the essay is the task. But in order to write the essay, I have to do research. I have to read things read source material in the target language. I have to think about the essay. I have to write the essay, get it edited, correct it myself, think about if that's the best wording, look up words I don't know what to say to write the essay. Then I hand the essay in. I get it back. I have all this feedback. I have to read the feedback, right? So I can implement it in the next essay for the class. Even in, God, now that I'm talking this out loud, even when I was in the more beginner classes, this would be when I took classes, or when I take classes even, that's often a part of the class. You're given these mini essays, it's maybe like a paragraph, and you write about your family. But because you're a beginner, it's a whole 6-hour process to write that paragraph. And that's another example of that task-based language teaching. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is I never realized until today that for me, 2 big keys to pushing past an intermediate level and reaching an advanced level have been the content and language integrated learning. So again, that's learning about a subject, studying a subject in the target language with the goal of simultaneously getting better at the language and the subject you're studying. And the second strategy is the task-based language teaching, TLBT, where you are trying to complete a task in the target language, and that is how you end up learning. I used to attribute my success in French and Spanish and such, at least a part of it, to the fact that I did a literature degree because I was reading literature and studying literature and debating literature, writing essays about literature, writing 22-page essays and such. I used to think that's why I had a very advanced level, which is partially true. But I think now that I've thought more about this, and I've learned, actually, I didn't know that these CLIL and TBLT, I didn't know there's a specific term for those until very recently. Now that I've learned that, I'm thinking to myself, right, you don't have to learn literature. You don't have to study literature to go from intermediate to advanced. No. But one potential option that will work is to pick a difficult task to try and complete over and over, multiple tasks even, in the target language, or use this content and language integrated learning where you learn about a subject in the target language. So if you have an intermediate level in Spanish and you're kind of stuck, what you might want to consider doing is think about what interests you. What do you want to learn more about that maybe you don't know a lot about now? Maybe you want to learn about how to fix a car. Maybe you want to learn how to swim. Maybe you want to learn about this is one for me, how to write nicer. My printing's kind of messy when I write by hand. How do I do that? Or who knows what you want to learn? I'm sure there's something you're interested in learning more about. Well, go learn more about it. Sign up for a class, find a YouTube playlist, find a course online, who knows? Learn more about it, but in your target language. You'll get better at the skill you want to learn, and you'll get better at the target language. Do that for a number of skills, and you're highly likely to push past that intermediate level and get into the advanced levels. The other thing you may want to consider, if you're stuck at that intermediate level and you want to push past, you also might want to consider using a task-based language teaching approach, a TLBT approach, where you pick a task that's important to you that you want to complete. And through the preparation of doing that task, doing the task, and then of course reflecting upon how that went after, you'll also improve quite rapidly. So for me, I'll give some examples of what I'm doing now. For Gujarati, I've got a podcast, a Gujarati teaching podcast that I'm doing. And listen, that task is hard for me. It's really hard. I have to prepare for it. I have to think about it. In the moment, it's hard for me. There's the reflection after, and that's helping me to improve. So try those two things, and I think that will help you. I think they'll very likely help you to move past that intermediate level and push to an advanced level. Thanks for listening to this podcast / watching this video. Hope you have a great day, and we'll chat soon. Bye-bye.